Hello, and thanks for joining us. This is the news update on television. Nigerian, I am Chiwendu Usisiago. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control and CDC reported 250 new cases of COVID-19 in 12 states and the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, on Tuesday. The NCDC also announced 7 people dying of COVID-19 complications, bringing the country's death toll to 3,133. It said the 7 deaths were backlogs from Ondo State between January 11 and 23. In the last 9 days, Nigeria reported daily COVID-19 cases below 300. With 250 people testing positive for the virus on Tuesday, the country's COVID-19 tally jumped to 252,678. The discharge rose to 227,491 after another 487 patients were given clean bill of health on Tuesday. The National Primary Healthcare Development Agency on Tuesday advised Nigerians to take children aged 0 to 23 months to vaccination sites to enable them to have access to childhood immunization, which encompasses vaccines for childhood diseases such as polio, yellow fever, and measles, among others. This is as the agency intimated to the public with plans to integrate the COVID-19 mass vaccination campaign with childhood immunization. The executive director of the agency, Faisal Shoaib, disclosed this during a discussion with journalists in Abuja. It was reported that Shoaib had earlier decried the suspension of childhood immunization, which his agency blamed the coronavirus pandemic for the outbreak of the circulating vaccine-derived polio. The president of the Senate, Amilawa, has stated that the war against corruption by the regime led by the President Muhammadu Buhari must be won irrespective of temporary setbacks. Lawal stated this in his remark after a bill seeking to establish the Weakness Protection and Management Framework scheduled second reading at the plenary on Tuesday. The Senate President also noted that the fight against corruption must be pursued by the government to ensure eventual elimination of grafts, given that same is capable of hindering Nigerians' development. Lawa added that the Weakness Protection Bill, if passed and signed into law, would be an incentive that encompasses weaknesses to testify in corruption cases since their protection is guaranteed under the law. The Muhammadu Buhari administration may have finally passed on the controversy around the fuel subsidy removal to his would-be successor in 2023. However, the subsidy may be taken out by July 2023, barely 1 month after a new administration must have been inaugurated. The federal government dropped the hint Tuesday while providing further insight into the reason the subsidy remains despite an earlier position that it will be removed by the end of June. The Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Silva, announced this while briefing State House correspondents in Abuja after a meeting with the President. The minister said the government would continue to engage with the leadership of the organized labor who had earlier proposed nationwide protest on January 27 against the subsidy removal. The Nigerian military has effected the arrest of several thugs headed to Ekiti State from Ibadan, Oyo State, for the newly contested PDP gubernatorial primaries. Eagle-eyed soldiers at about 3 a.m. on Wednesday morning intercepted the thug, who are members of the Oyo State Park Management System, otherwise known as National Union Workers, at Ita Awure Efo Junction, Osun State. It was gathered that the thugs were headed to disrupt the People's Democratic Party PDP primaries slated for today. The thugs were mobilized to prevent emergence of a certain candidate for the 2022 governorship election. Several locally made guns, machetes, charms, and ammunition were recovered from them. On the business stories, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has assured Nigerians that food prices will stabilize and would not rise as people had anticipated in 2022, adding that the higher inflation experienced in December was temporary. The assurance was made by the CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele during a chat with journalists, after presenting the outcome of a 2-day monetary policy committee meeting on Tuesday in Abuja. According to Emefiele, the rise in food prices could likely be attributed to logistical problems, especially on transportation, or maybe the destruction of food produce or perishable items from farm to the market. He also blamed the activities of others as part of the reasons for rising food prices, said the committee would do everything possible to stop it. Again, the Central Bank of Nigeria has retained the monetary policy rate at 11.5%. The CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele disclosed this during a briefing after the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting for the year held in Abuja on Tuesday. Other parameters left unchanged are the cash reserve ratio and liquidity ratio at 27.5% and 30% respectively. Announcing the committee's decision, Emefiele said after a careful balancing on the benefits and the downside risks of the policy option, the MPC decided to hold all parameters constant, believing that a hold stance will enable the current policy measure in supporting the recorded growth, recovery, and further boost production and productivity, which will rein in inflation in the short to medium term. And that's the news update on television. Nigerian, I am Chiwendu Osisego. Have a wonderful day.